Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of the Writer's Corner. As always, I am your host, Anthony Avina. Thank you for joining me today. This is episode 25, and yes, we were absent last week from the podcast just because of time constraints, but we have a brand new episode here for you now. And episode 25 is going to be dealing with a subject we talked about a couple weeks ago, and that is monsters in writing, I should say. Just to clarify, monsters in writing, um, everyone assumes that the most evil person in a room, the most monstrous thing, is the thing with claws and fangs and, you know, red eyes, all that stuff, typical vampire, werewolf kind of thing. Those are what people consider monsters. But monsters come in all shapes and sizes, and there's more than one type of monster. Today we're going to analyze the monsters that are born evil, and we're going to analyze the monsters that we create ourselves. First, let's talk about the monsters that are born evil. Monsters like that have no outside interference in their bloodlust, in their agenda for destruction. Monsters like that have no outside communication with anyone to kind of influence their mindset. These monsters just have one thing and one thing only on their minds: chaos. Whether it's small things like, small little acts of criminal, stuff like that, or, straight up monsters that kill, monsters that defile and just are evil in every sense of the word. Um, Let me give you an example. One of my most popular books that I've ever written is I Was a Teenage Killer. The story is a look, and this is perfect for this podcast. The story is a retrospective look at what defines a monster and who we suspect of being a monster as opposed to who really is a monster. People always assume that killers have a certain look. They look mangy. They have wild eyes or dead eyes. They have, they're ugly. They're outcast from society. But what if a killer was someone you knew? Someone you loved? Someone that seemed to be the pinnacle of the American dream? That's what I Was a Teenage Killer was about. And my main character in that book and two subsequent books afterwards was Lisa Etron, a very popular, beautiful woman in high school. She was a senior in high school. She's the most popular cheerleader type in school. However, she has a penchant for killing. She is obsessed with serial killers. Her goal in life is to become notorious for her chaos inducing crimes. Um, she doesn't want to get caught, but at the same time, she wants people to fear her. She wants to be able to pull one over on people's eyes by killing and never once being suspected. And think about it, who among us would ever suspect a young, beautiful cheerleader of being a cold blooded, heartless killer? There is no emotion other than rage in her. Every emotion you think you see on her face, love, happiness, joy, it's a facade. That's what a monster really is. A monster is not defined by what one looks like, but by the characteristics of a person's heart and soul. A monster will kill without remorse and laugh about it. Now let's talk about the monsters that we make. The monsters that we make are those individuals or creatures that we kind of force to become monsters. Um, these people have been abused, neglected, outcast from society, shunned, made fun of, bullied, whatever you want to call it. These people have done nothing wrong before their crimes. They just wanted a shot at a normal life. But our own cruelty, our own human nature, forced us to put them down so much that they had no choice but to become the monsters that we kind of vilified them to be already. Let me give you an example of this. One of my all-time favorite books, one of my all-time favorite authors, Stephen King, his very first book was called Carrie. Those of you who don't know the story of Carrie, it focuses on a group of young kids in high school. The main character is, of course, Carrie White. She is a very shy, reserved girl who was raised by an overtly religious woman who pretty much thinks that anything feminine or normal in by society standards is a sin against God. She's locked her daughter up in a basement closet scenario whenever she feels that she's been sinned or sinning against her Lord. She has mentally and verbally abused her daughter. Sometimes, it could get physical even. On top of this, the kids at school make fun of her. They put her down. The opening scene of the book and film is this poor young girl's first menstrual cycle in a locker room and having all the high school girls in her class throwing tampons at her, berating her, abusing her, making her just feel awful. This is an example of human society making the monsters that terrorize us. Because what these kids fail to know is that this young girl was born with a gift for telekinesis. And while this may seem like, oh man, she's got a cool superpower or something, you abuse someone long enough, you have to sit there and watch them become a villain. And that's what happened to this young girl. She just wanted a shot at her normal life. She wanted happiness. She wanted to be loved, to have friends. She went to her high school prom with the most popular guy in school, thanks to the efforts of one young girl who tried to redeem herself for the opening scene of the book. She wanted to do right by Carrie White. However, the rest of her high school class didn't quite get the memo. Two very popular kids who felt it was their job to humiliate Carrie poured pig's blood on her after she was crowned homecoming queen. So as she sat there drenched in pig's blood, utterly humiliated for what must have been the thousandth time, Carrie White snapped. She became, in that instant, the monster that we had built up. And that's what happens a lot in fiction, in our writing, and in society in general. Not all monsters are born evil. There are some. There are some people in life and in our fiction that we write who just, no matter how much you give them, no matter how much you love and affection and, you know, monetary help, no matter how much you raise them right, some people are born wrong, are born with a fault. And whether that's genetics or a more moral question, that's up for debate. But they are just born evil. But then we have people like Carrie White. And I'm not saying everyone's got telekinetic powers or anything like that, but There are examples in our society and examples in, you know, our fiction that kind of speak of the monsters that we make. I was just recently watching a special on the actual legends of vampires in our society. What kind of transpired to make the modern day romantic and theatrical vampire legend. Because vampires originally weren't, you know, the, Dracula-esque vampires. They were originally known as Strigoi, and the legend started from the 4th century. However, one of the most interesting things about the vampire legend that I was watching the special on was that a lot of these individuals who were killed and had their bodies desecrated after their death were killed because they were believed to be vampires, but after some DNA tests in modern days, found that they had some rare genetic disorders that made them averse to light, to garlic, and the skin around their teeth would recede and just whittle away, making it look like that they had fangs, even though they don't. It was a genetic disorder, something they couldn't help. They didn't do anything wrong. But because in those times, science was very much more of a superstitious thing. It was ruled by superstition and faith in the newly established Christianity in Eastern Europe. These people were put to death. And we made the monsters ourselves. They didn't do anything. They didn't become the monsters. We did. So, gotta ask the question, how many instances are there in society even today where we make monsters of people who had no business being monsters in the first place? I'll concede to you again. There are monsters that are born evil. But how many monsters do we make in the same time? And these monsters that we make, were they always going to head into a monstrous path? Or is their evil that they commit after we do what we do, are they monsters that are a reflection of ourselves? That is a question that I find intriguing and that I like to explore a lot in my books. I'm working on a sci-fi novel right now where I'm going to explore the question, who's evil? The unknown alien creature that you encounter? Or the brother you thought you knew? Sometimes things aren't black and white. Sometimes you can't encounter an alien creature that looks different, that acts different, that has a more advanced technology than you, and assume that they're evil, that their intent is to kill. Because sometimes those willing and wanting to kill you are the ones you spent your whole life loving. Sometimes they're the ones that you spent your whole life bullying, and then surprise, surprise, they come after you. They become the very thing you made them into. Well, that's going to do it here for us, guys. That was my analysis of the monsters that are born evil versus the monsters that we make. I hope you guys enjoy this podcast. This was episode 25. In the comments below or in your reviews of this podcast, I would like to know, what is your favorite type of monster to read about? Whether it's in fiction or in real life. What kind of story intrigues you more? The monsters that are born evil or the monsters that our society creates ourselves? Leave your comments down below in this video or leave your thoughts in the review. Every review and comment helps on this podcast, so if you guys could make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes and SoundCloud, I'd appreciate it. And then leave your comments or your reviews on the podcast, letting me know what we should talk about next time, what your thoughts on this podcast is, any constructive criticism, comments, suggestions would be much appreciated. And I'd be happy to start answering some questions from you guys, the listeners, anytime you feel like reading or leaving comments. So leave your reviews, leave your comments, and I'll be happy to start answering some questions at the end of the podcast as well. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you're watching this on YouTube, give this video a big thumbs up, like this video, comment on it, favorite it, and share it. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so already. Every subscription counts, and your support has meant the world to us as we continue to grow, so thank you. Check out all our social media links down in the description box, and check out the eye in the sky for today's recommended videos. And for our listeners here on iTunes and SoundCloud, thank you for tuning in. Please hit the subscription button. Every subscription counts, like I said, for YouTube as well. Make sure you check out the links in the description to follow us on social media. And stay tuned for a brand new episode next week. We're going to be figuring out the next topic. We'll announce it on Twitter probably at some point. But until then, this is author Anthony Avina, and I want to say thank you for tuning in to the Writer's Corner. Long days and pleasant nights, my friends.